Good evening. This is Wallace Gator Bradley. First off, I want to send out a prayer to my wife, and I hope she get better. But know that this show is put together by none other than the chairman of United in Peace, Inc., and she's also the producer of this show. And that's none other than my wife, Terry Marsh. So, babe, I'll send my love to you and my prayers that you get better. And on another note, I want to say, to God be the glory. There's a lot of things that's been happening in the news. As you all know, the Cook County Democratic Party had an endorsement session, and they made the decision on who they're going to endorse for the Supreme Court of Illinois. And they picked Scott Neville. And it's been brought to my attention that Justice House is going to have a press conference, and he's going to let it be known publicly what his intentions are in reference to whether or not he's going to stay in the race or he's going to get out the race, because there's an issue over the integrity of the Supreme Court. So without saying anything more, I'm allow House to let the people know what his intentions are. And that's going to be in the near future. Suffice to say, hopefully within the next 48 hours, but hey, again, as everybody know, I was supporting him. Okay, and I'm like this here. It was kind of hard for me to sit in the room. That's why I say sometimes people, my viewing audience, I may seem a lot passionate on this political thing, because it's more than just me backing a candidate or making a decision. But when you inside those rooms and you seeing what's transpiring, and especially about judges, anybody that's blessed to be elected or appointed to sit over judgment of others, I feel like that's a blessing from God, because, as you know, we are not to judge anyone. But attorneys know this to be a fact, that when they go into a courtroom, and if they feel that a judge has an inference of bias against their client, or inference of impropriety, they have a right by law to seek another judge for their case. If a person's integrity as a sitting judge has became an issue, as it has become an issue in this case, what's important is that it's important to have an African American as a Supreme Court justice. But when you got other candidates that's in the race that are not African American, and they feel that it shouldn't be an African American or Latino on the Supreme Court, one can't give them anything to give the impression that the wrong African American that's represented the African American community is on or has been given the responsibility to represent the African American community as Supreme Court Justice. But that's going to be up to the voters. And as you know, Dorothy Brown has made a decision that she was not going to run for re-election as the clerk of the courts of Cook County. Excuse me. As the clerk of Cook County. And they made a decision. They picked the Cook County Democratic Party. They made a selection of a guy to run for the clerk's office. It's my understanding that an African American, Mr. Boykin, will possibly be throwing his name in the ring to run for the clerk of the court of Cook County. So there's going to be African American within that race. They made decisions on the appellate court justices, and I'm glad that they made a decision that Mike Hyman, appellate court justice, will be one of the individuals, and I'm going to be pushing for him wholeheartedly. He's the individual that in 2008, he made a decision to hire me to help him run for the circuit court of Cook County when they said they didn't want a Jewish person, or it was going to be hard for a Jewish person to be elected even though he was qualified. And it was an assistant state's attorney happened to be Irish, and he was with gang crime, and they was pushing and saying it was wrong for him to hire me, even though I had a pardon, even though I helped elect Carol Mosley Brown, even though I've changed my life around. It still felt like I wasn't worthy of telling people to vote. Suffice to say, hit all the newspapers, front page news. Judge hired former gang member to work in his campaign. And I'll never forget, Judge Freeman was on his sick bed. And he saw it on the news. And he had John Davis to have a press conference. And he came through the doors on, it was the second floor of City Hall in a wheelchair. And he got up and he had a press conference, and he said that Judge Hyman had the right to hire whomever he wanted to help in his campaign, and especially me, to help the judge get elected. That was the last public statement that Judge Freeman made before he died. We went on and we won that race. I think we beat our opponent by 65,000 votes. Here we are in 2019, preparing for 2020. And Judge Hyman is an appellate court judge. He was appointed to become an appellate court judge, and he has to run for the seat because Neville, who was an appellate court judge, by the blessing of Freeman, was appointed to be the present interim Supreme Court justice. Also, at the session today, Kim Foxx got the full endorsement of the Cook County Democratic Party to run for state's attorney. That's very important because we know that there's a guy that represents what is known as the 1%. That's the rich people, okay, the privileged. And he has said that he's going to run for state's attorney against Kim Foxx. He pretty much going to have the support of fraternal order police, along with possibly the white supremacy individuals that's in support of the fraternal order police, getting rid of Kim Foxx because she has freed individuals because of police misconduct. You can Google these things that I'm talking about. There was over 80 individuals who were either framed by a police sergeant who had got found guilty for framing individuals and placing drugs on them, you know what I mean? And those cases were reversed, those convictions were reversed. Kim Foxx represents criminal justice reform within Cook County, and the fraternal police have written letters and they say they don't feel that that's right. The election is March 17th, 2020. They say hindsight is 2020, and I agree. But we're moving forward. Within less than 6 months, we'll be in the year of 2020. 2020 elections around the country is very important. It's a presidential election, and we see what's happening in Washington, D.C. People are going to be coming out to vote to get a new president and hopefully a new United States Senate where it will be controlled by the Democratic Party instead of the Republican Party. So this election is very important. Regardless how I feel, it's not important. You have a responsibility to check into the candidates, make the right choice, listen to them. And I'm saying this, which is key. We as a people have to, especially in the African American community, where everybody is saying we got to be united. And I'm with that. But sometimes, let me make an analogy. If the people in the African American community is saying if only Gator and Joe Blue, or Joe Black in this case, can get together in unity because we can't make a decision which one of them will be the best candidate to represent us when we have to have one of us to be elected. And if I, Gator, make the bogus mistake where my integrity is questioned, make the right choice and go with the individual, because if it's important to have an African American, be it a clerk, be it a judge, be it whatever it is, we have to be accountable to the voters. We have to show that we are responsible, we are ethical, and we have moral fortitude. Not just a good resume to run. For all voters, understand the importance of the office that brings about fairness for everyone. Study those that's running for office. Get a sheet, especially if it's an incumbent. See what they have done. Start off at the point of when they was running and they said what they were going to do. Judge that and see if they did what they say they were going to do. Don't get caught up on slick commercials with promises of someone saying what they're going to do, as if it outweighs what an individual who has got elected has done. This election, no one should sit out. You got until March 17th. There's going to be some fancy commercials. There's going to be some slanderous commercials. There's going to be some truthful commercials. But at the end of the day, you as a people got them right to make the right decision when it comes to your vote. One thing about the mayoral election, the people came out and voted. They made their decision, and they spoke loud and clear. So I ask no one to sit at home and say they're not going to vote. Use your right to vote. Something else that was brought to my attention. When I see the Illinois prison ban, they cut books with racial stuff in it. Racial stuff. What is racial stuff? They don't want individuals within the Danville institution to be able to have books that says or deal with black history. What do you mean by that, Gator? Officials at the Illinois prison suspended an educational program for inmates, launched 2 internal investigations, and removed 200 books from a prison library. This is 2019. And they trying to censor individuals who's trying to learn by reading. A lot of inmates go into institutions, okay, they don't know how to read. They're functioning illiterates. I know because I once was one. I couldn't read. I learned how to read within the institution. But this is a cultural thing here. Now they let them have Playboys, magazines, and other magazines. But here it says, the 200 books from a prison library because many had racial content or addressed issues like diversity and inclusion. They want to get rid of books that's dealing with diversity and inclusion. And those same individuals someday are going to be released back into society, into the cities that they come from. While everybody that's running for office, I heard so much about diversity at the slating session. Yet, you don't want a person to read and learn about inclusion with, hey, can we just get along? According to records obtained by the Tribune through the Freedom of Information, Danville Correctional Center officials also prohibited for use in the University of Illinois program several classic books of African American history. If you don't want them to learn about the history, why it's so important, of the struggles of African Americans, if they don't understand the struggles of African Americans, they can't understand that killing one another has to stop, because you're standing on the shoulders of people that sacrifice to make things better for you, and if you didn't take it to really make things better for your children. Yet they don't want inmates to learn. You hear what I'm saying? So we need to call the governor's office and tell him he got to change this. If he signed the bill to push a curriculum within the schools about the lesbian and gays and everything else, they got a right to learn about them because they're here. They're part of humanity and society. So he shouldn't stop individuals from learning about their culture within the penitentiary when they're going to be released someday back into society that's dealing with diversity and inclusion. So take time and call your state rep. Call your state senator and tell them to explain to the governor in case he don't know what's happening. You have to have senators, you have to have programs within the institutions, Governor, to help prepare an individual to come back to society. I believe you need to get with the unions to help put programs within the institutions where individuals can become apprentices while they're in there, so they're not wasting time and they can come out and be prepared to get a job. But you don't erase one's culture. Read this again. Danville Correctional Center officials also prohibited for use in the University of Illinois program several classic books of African American history, including The Souls of Black Folk, the anti-slavery novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, and the memoir of former slave and abolitionist Frederick Douglass. Hundreds of pages of records released by the Illinois Department of Corrections in response to the Freedom of Information Act requests paint the clearest picture yet of the origin of the dispute between IDOC and the Education Justice Project. And while the department's public statements about the controversy emphasized that the books had not been appropriately reviewed, these books are not saying how to make a bomb or saying how to overthrow the government. These are educational material that the individual is using in order to get credits in a program in case they decide that they want to get a degree when they get out to make their life better. And I'm screaming about it because the majority of individuals that's inside the institution are African Americans. And I know that the Latino community wouldn't stand for someone trying to erase their culture. I'm saying that call your governor because we elected him. If he's trying to be about a reentry program, you got to educate people. Call him and tell him to put this program back in the institution. And with that, I want to say, to God be the glory. Get out there and vote. And like I say, Justice House is planning to have a press conference to let everyone know what his intentions are. I'm waiting to hear that myself. But one thing for sure, I will vote and I won't choke. To God be the glory. Thank you. Have a safe weekend.